Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 47 of Duke's Download. I'm Duke Mason, and I am so excited to have the actor Harry Hamlin joining us today, who I'm not only a big fan of, but I'm an admirer of his for the amazing contribution that he made to gay history with his film Making Love, which actually is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. It's a groundbreaking film, and I am excited to talk to him about it. He actually just texted me, so forgive me for a moment while I answer his text now. Just going to give him a second. But yeah, not only am I a fan of Harry's for Making Love, but actually I'm a fan of his for a bunch of his other work, some of which we'll be discussing as well during this interview. But I think he should be on any second. Let's see. We'll give him a minute. Hold on. Guys, just wait for 1 second. We're having some technical difficulties, but he should be on any minute. He's never done an Instagram live before, so this is his first time doing this, so hopefully he will come on shortly. Anyway, thank you for all the support, everybody. Harry Hamlin joined. I am going to send him a request. Invite, I think, because I see you. Harry!
There you are. Okay.
Sorry about that. I know it's complicated, this Instagram thing.
Well, it's not complicated. It's just that I'm not much of a social media guy. So, I mean, I follow Lisa, but I probably look at her thing once every 3 months. So I let the kids and everybody else tell me what she.
No, and believe me, even I have issues with Instagrams, and I've done this a few times now. So, but no, thank you so much for doing this. As I was just saying in my introduction, I'm a huge admirer of yours, and of course a huge fan of your wife's as well, and your whole family. Your daughters are
Thank you.
incredible, and but no, I wanted to talk to you because I actually saw Making Love for the first time when I was a teenager, and it had such a huge impact on me. And this was at the time probably about 25 years after the film had come out. And then about 5 years after that, I got to introduce the film at Outfest for the 30th anniversary screening, and I believe you were actually there. And
I was.
we met very briefly, but so the film has had a huge impact on me, and I saw the fact that you had done an interview with People magazine for the film's 40th anniversary. And for those of you who've joined us who aren't yet familiar with the film, it was actually the first major studio film in history to address same-sex romance or LGBT issues in general. And no studio film had ever done that. So my first question for you, Harry, is what was it, maybe you could give a little insight into the when you were first offered the role, and sort of what the circumstances around that were and your thought process on whether to take the role.
Well, I was offered the role, and I think every actor, every movie star in Hollywood had been offered the role. It finally got to me. They had all turned it down. And I had been offered a bunch of sort of stupid movies that year. I had just done Clash of the Titans. It hadn't come out yet. And I was looking around for something that was serious, that was not some kooky or strange science fiction movie. A lot of stuff was really weird was coming out at that time. It was a strange time for film in general, but then this movie came along. It was about something really that was going on in the zeitgeist. It was real. I mean, it was something that people weren't really talking about, but we knew it was going on everywhere. This is, by the way, pre-AIDS, pre-HIV. So that wasn't being discussed, and nobody knew about that at that time. And I saw this movie that was about something that was really going on, and I I didn't hesitate actually to take it, though I was told by a lot of people that I couldn't take it. And I was told that the reason that other actors hadn't taken it because they thought it would hurt their career. And I guess I have a certain amount of hubris, and I always say, well, I can do anything. I can make anything work. And so I was able to make that choice, and I think it was the right choice. I got some kind of weird thing going on here, and I got to see if I can get rid of it. Anyway, that's what I did, and the ramifications were almost immediate. That the people who turned it down were not wrong. That it was going to hurt their career, um, and so my career took a U-turn in a way, and I went to television after that, and had a great career in TV. And now TV's back, and oddly enough, I've just gotten my first feature film role since that time. It's taken 40 years, and I just day before yesterday got a feature film role again for Paramount. I can't tell you what the movie is, but it's the first time I've been in a studio since in 40 years. So it took come back, but I'm back, baby. I'm back.
Well, as we'll discuss, I mean, you've definitely been around and been, on the forefront a lot of other ways for, since then. But no, I mean, I find it so interesting that, you may have seen the article that I wrote on the film and on your role in the film a couple of weeks ago. I sent it to Lisa.
Right.
But the fact that Making Love was released 10 years before Philadelphia, and before the fact that this was far before playing gay and in a role could actually be was trendy, or before it was socially acceptable. So I don't think people, I mean, some people understand it, but I think it's really important to emphasize all the people that said when you came out recently and said you thought the film had hurt your career. You were saying it not as a negative thing. I know you've said, many times how you were so proud of the film, but it's just as a statement of fact that Hollywood and American culture in general was very different back then. And so, I mean, like, I find it, I would be very interested to hear your thoughts on if you've reflected on the fact that, this was a very different time before, 10 years before Tom Hanks and other actors played gay, and it became sort of a benefit to their careers.
Well, it was way ahead of its time. That's true. And it didn't hurt my career. It changed my career.
Right,
I'm not hurt it. I've had a great career and still having it now. I'm working more than I have in a long time.
Right.
Look, I mean, you could have sour grapes about something like that and say, oh my God, this hurt my career or whatever. I made the choice to do the movie, and I stand by that choice. And to this day, people come up to me on a weekly basis to thank me for making the movie. I mean, there aren't many movies that are made 40 years ago and that affected so many people's lives so positively, and that an actor can say, well, people are still coming up to me 40 years later and saying, thank you for making that movie. That was, a seminal moment in my life. It helped me come out, or helped me explain my sexuality to my parents or my loved ones or whatever. I mean, that was an amazing opportunity for me, and I grabbed it at the time. Oddly enough, I had a whole friend group of people who were in my acting school in San Francisco, had migrated to LA, and then I started making films, and they wanted to see the movie. And I arranged a screening for them in the screening room, and there were about 30 people, and I can't get rid of that for what it is.
Oh, it's fine. Doesn't matter.
So I'm actually working right now with somebody on getting some supplies to Ukraine, and so we are going back and forth. Kind of it's a rush thing because they need it right away.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so my friends came to see the movie, and they were all excited when they walked into the screening room. And then when the movie finished, I'll never forget. We walked outside, and they all just got in their cars and drove away. I was like they went like, oh well, that's not going to work. Or I don't know what exactly, but our whole friendship changed after that. I think they were embarrassed to know me in a way, which was odd. But
if you don't mind me asking, I mean, just to delve into that, like, were you personally, and I mean, look, again, it was a very different time. Like, were you personally afraid, or were you like, were you aware of just how viscerally some people might react, negatively to it? Was that a big, or did you just kind of, because I mean, it took a lot of courage to take on that role. Were you personally afraid or concerned, or did you just delve into it sort of without fear?
I went into it without fear because, I'm an actor. And as an actor, we take on roles of people. And like, I've played, I've played a lot of different characters. And, so I played good guys and bad guys. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
go into playing a bad guy saying, oh, if I play this bad guy, people are going to think I'm a bad guy. I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
not how I approach it. But, I was aware that it was, this kind of thin ice. But I went for it wholeheartedly, and I'm glad that I did.
After you took the role, what were some of your most for you memorable or important moments throughout the making of the film? Because I mean, there's so many elements of it that I find so interesting. I mean, the fact that you guys shot it in LA, right, and you shot it in West Hollywood. It's so funny because there are a lot of places where you can see in the film where either there are some of the same businesses and bars and restaurants that are still here, but also there have been a lot of changes, obviously, since then. But like, what was it like shooting it? And are there any particular memories that stand out to you from the making of it?
Oh, absolutely. You kidding me? I mean, it was iconic in my memory, that making of that movie. And I was just in West Hollywood the other night. A friend of mine was having his 60th birthday party, and he was the guy who helped me and Lisa get into Chicago when we went to Broadway to go to Chicago. Greg Butler, and he
Wow.
he helped folks from out here who are going to Broadway. That helps him. So he was having his birthday. And right next door to the restaurant was the Mother Lode, which is a gay bar on Santa Boulevard. And I said, "Whoa, that's the place I went to do my research for the movie." Because
Wow.
it's very different now than it was then. But I remember, thinking, well, I need to figure out this lifestyle, and I want to get the vibe of it and all that. And I did a lot of things to try to get into that, but not the least of which was going to the Mother Lode, to get a drink, soak it in. And I was saying
By the
to
way, may
Greg,
I just say how crazy it must have been, because you were a huge star even at that point. I mean,
I was,
you just done Clash of the Titans. What was it like for you walking into a gay bar back then? I mean, that people must have been like, "Oh my
it,
God!" Like,
it was different, put it that way. I, uh, I went in really crowded. And in those days, they used to it was a thing to stack the cases of beer up on each other. I don't know if they still do that or not, but it was kind of a thing in all gay bars. They had stacks of cases of beer. I walked in, place was really crowded, and of course, guys started coming up to me and saying, "Can I buy you a drink?" And I said, "Well, listen, I'm really here. I'm doing a part that I'm doing," and every single one of them going, "Oh yeah, yeah, we've heard that one before." Let me buy you a drink. Well, come
oh
on
my
back.
God, that is hysterical.
It was pretty funny, but
Oh, I mean,
one
literally, because not only were you a big star, you were also a sex symbol. I mean, so I mean, the fact that I can only imagine. I mean, it would be the equivalent now of, I mean, whoever. Yeah, I mean, not Brad Pitt, but you know what I mean. It was the same kind of thing. I mean, people must have been like, "This is the most surreal moment ever." So, I mean, for you, it must have
I,
been like, "Whoa,"
yeah,
you know.
I think it was for them a little surreal. I kept my head down, and this one guy came up to me and sort of protected me. And he said, "Oh, don't you worry, don't. I'm not going to let anybody take advantage of you now." And so we got, and he gave me his phone number, and I think we met for lunch after that, and I asked him a lot of questions about West Hollywood, the lifestyle, and all of that. And I also did.
Mhm.
I remember both Michael and I did a hotline, a gay hotline of some kind, and we went on that. People were calling in to try and get the vibe. Um, but yeah, it was a memorable movie, and no one had ever kissed. Two men had never kissed on screen in a big studio movie, and that was going to be a big deal, right? Because
Mhm.
kiss. There was this moment when Michael Onkin realizes that I'm gay, and he realizes that he's probably gay, and then he goes in for a
Sure.
kiss. And so at the very beginning in the rehearsal process, Michael came up to me and said, "Listen, we got to rehearse the kiss." I said, "Well, I don't think we have to rehearse the kiss because this is the first time you've ever kissed a guy, right?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "So what?" I said, "Have you ever kissed a guy before?" He goes, "No." Well, let's make it be the first time you've ever kissed a guy, okay? Because I don't really think we need to rehearse that. But he said, God, if Richard Gere was doing this, he'd be down in West Hollywood, hanging out with, doing dirty, and I said, well, I'm not Richard Gere, and I don't really need to go there. I think I can figure this one out on the so um, so it got to the day that we were going to film the kiss, and we were at Fox on the set, and all the suits came over from the offices. Sherry Lansing ran the studio, and Dan Melnick, the producer, came, and the writers came, Scott Berg and Barry Sandler, and it was this big moment when they were going to stand behind the camera and watch as these two men, for the very first time in Hollywood history, walked in front of the camera, kiss, and so I went up to Michael, and we had never rehearsed it, so I went up to Michael before the shot, and I said, "Listen," I said, "why don't we just why don't we make this a very romantic kiss? Make it very like our lips barely touch, and slightly open mouth, no tongues, just kind of very romantic. And then it will, we'll turn around and walk into the bedroom, and then it'll know what's going to happen." And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Okay." So then the camera turns over, and they yell, action, and I'm standing up on a landing, and all of a sudden Michael comes in, and he puts his hand behind my neck and goes in for an open mouth kiss, and before I know it, his tongue is like on my uvula, and I'm going, okay, this is more than I bargained for, and I'm thinking to myself, I thought we deal, and so one thing I'm thinking is, don't flinch, whatever you do, we have one take,
But you don't want to have to do this again. Yeah.
I don't want
No,
Michael's tongue.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well,
Yeah.
no, you was exactly right, and so the kiss ended, and we put our arms around each other, and we walked off the set into our bedroom, and they yelled cut, and I said, "Michael, I said no tongues," and we walked out, and Sherry Lansing was like on the floor laughing, and so was Dan Melnick. They were completely cut up from that, and
Well,
unfortunately
go ahead.
they said we had to do take two, and take two is the movie. So
Oh, really? The second one was the
that,
second
but
take.
but
I think two really important things about that. Number one, the fact that I think it worked, that it was, as opposed to like an aggressively sexual kiss. I mean, at least from the the second take, the fact, because and still to some extent in our society, people see homosexuality and gay relationships as being more aggressively sexual, and I think maybe with the whole AIDS thing, part of the image at the time was, all gay men want to do is have promiscuous sex and whatever. The fact that you guys portrayed the relationship as being so romantic and tender and emotional, versus, I think that actually was a really important, I know it has been referenced as being a really important cultural moment, because that was the first time really that people could see that gays actually have normal romantic relationships, instead of these sort of underground sort of dark sexual liaisons. So I think number one, that was really important, and number two, I think it's amazing that you were all so cognizant of what an important moment that was, and that's why Barry and Scott Berg and Sherry Lansing, and they were all there for that moment, because they recognized how that was the first time in history that had ever been done. So I think it's so interesting that you all went, and credit to all of you, that you were all aware and fearless about the fact that you knew what you were doing was important and historic. So I don't know if that's really a question. I want you to know, and I hope you know how much that means to people.
well, I think that's why for the last 40 years, people have continued to come up to me and thank me for the movie. I mean, that, and you know, you're right. I mean, the whole idea that this was a romantic relationship and not a, you know, one night stand or a one-on-one.
Right.
So that I think was important.
Mhm.
You know, they did ask us to make love after that kiss, and both Michael and I said, you know, maybe you could just show us like post-coital, like you know, like have a cigarette or something afterwards, and kind of, because people can imagine what happened from the kiss to
Yeah.
the moment after. And so we
Yeah.
filmed that moment, post-coital moment, and that was what was agreed to. That, you know, Arthur Hiller said, yeah, we think that's right. Little do we know that after we left the set that night, Barry Sandler got into his car and went down to Santa Monica Boulevard and found two guys who looked approximately like me and Michael,
No
and
way.
bucks, and brought them back up to the studio and said, "Would you guys make love for the camera?"
What?
Um, yeah, and so that's in the movie. You see us doing it
Right.
in
What I was thinking was I remember it's kind of like they show it kind of either in the mirror or in the window, right?
well,
You
there's
can
one
kind
cut that shows it from up above, looking down, straight down. I don't know if that's the cut that made it that was the original. That was the cut that was in the 30th when I saw it with you 10 years ago.
of
That overhead angle, but that was not.
wow.
No, that was two guys that they just got from a bar, you know, down Santa
That's
Monica Boulevard.
incredible.
And when we saw the
That's
movie,
insane.
Michael and I were not happy about that, but you know, we laugh about it.
Well, yeah, no, I know what you mean because those men were supposedly you. No, I understand that, you know, and then people didn't know that was not. No, totally
They were,
makes sense. Um, but I also wanted to ask about the release of the film because that in itself is kind of both for good and for bad, you know, considered kind of legendary because you know there was a lot of backlash to the release of the film. I mean, you know, there are a lot of stories of like the thing I say good and bad because you have the stories of the gay men who as either as teenagers or as adults went to see the film and were inspired by the film, but then would be sitting there in the theater and would see the reactions that other people had to the film, walking out of the theater. Some people, like I read one story recently of a guy who was watching it and would heard other people in the theater saying like, don't do it, when the two of you were about to kiss in the film. And I mean, what memories stand out to you in terms of what the release of the film was like, and what like the opening weekend and the reactions that people had? I mean, what was it like for you personally when it came out and having to sort of see what was going on with the release?
well, that's an interesting question because William Reynolds, who edited the film, was a two-time Academy Award winner, five-time nominee. He was nominated for The Godfather. He won for The Sting, for The Sound of Music, and he edited the film. And the day that he finished editing the film, which was several months before its release, he called me up and he said, "Harry, I'm Bill Reynolds. You don't know me, but I know you really well because I've been editing the last 4 months." And he said, "In my opinion, you're going to get a nomination for this part, for this role." And I went, "Whoa." I had never even thought about that, but then he explained to me why he thought that it was worthy of a nomination, and I said, "Well, I don't know, Bill. Like, listen, it's just a movie, blah blah blah." But it did kind of get into me that, wow, this could be great, right? Well, then the opening day came, which was February the 14th, 1992, and by February the 15th, I knew that things were going to change in my life because the reviews that came out were that I saw, and I try not to read reviews, but people would say, "Here's, you put it in front of me," and they were, I never saw any good ones. I think you said you saw some good ones, but I remember the Hollywood. It was either the Reporter or Variety. It was one of the trades. The guy who did the review had been my teacher at Yale in a graduate film class that I had taken, a seminar that I had taken
Wow.
5 years. Wait a minute, 1992. That would have been
82,
would have
82,
been
right?
I would have been 73 when I took that class, so 74. 74. It's spring of 74. So that guy wrote the review in the Hollywood Reporter, and he gave a horrible review. And at the end, he said, to add insult to injury, or something along those lines, the same idea, They hired a male model to play Bart. Didn't mention my name, just said they hired a male model to play Bart. So, I mean, this is a guy that I had been, you know, one-on-one with years before in his class. And it was like, how could this happen? How could this guy do it? You know, I mean, did he not research maybe that I had a Master of Fine Arts, that I'd gone to Yale, that, you know, that I was, you know, had made other movies, that I wasn't a male model, but he said, you know, he called me a male model. And that was like, oh, I mean, I think about fake news today and how that must affect some people when they see it in press, you know, in the press, but that really burned me, you know.
I mean, somebody, I hope you, I don't know if you saw, by the way, somebody in the comments just said, um, let's see, it was actually, I mean, there's some great, so like multiple comments. Harry was so gracious when we met. He sat with me and talked with me about the movie and thanked me for the letter I'd written to say, thanks for basically saving my life. I mean, so, you know, people are, same guy said, Harry, Michael, and Kate saved my life. This film, Making Love, provided me the hope I needed at a critical survival moment in my life. I was lucky enough to meet Harry and thank him personally. So, you know, it's true. I mean, other, you know, reviews like that, I imagine, are painful and you know, difficult to deal with. But, you know, but sometimes, you know, look, like a lot of things, sometimes it takes 30, 40 years, you know, for the work that you do, you know, in a you know, 40, whatever. But you know what I mean? I think about, I think soon after, relatively soon, what, 10 years after the film came out, the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? You know, the consideration of it started taking place. You know, I think, you know, but I'm happy that now, 40 years later, you know, it really now is getting, you know, significant credit. And I was going to ask you though, you know, I know the film is having a 40th anniversary screening on June 23rd, and you're doing a Q&A for it. How did that come together? Like, have you been? I know with the People magazine interview. Like, how did this sort of or celebration of the 40th anniversary come about?
Well, it was all a brainchild. Several months ago, I realized 40th anniversary, and so I called up Scott Berg, and Scott, you know, this is the 40th anniversary of this movie. We got to do something. And he said, "Yeah, you're right. We got to do something." So, you know, between me and Scott and my publicist, we were able to get the scene thing going, and then articles going. Well, and then Scott was able to. He knew the guy who runs the museum, and so he was able to get to him. Scott really put that together, the screening on the 20th.
That's awesome. It's so great. I'm going to be there. I'm excited. I'm sure tickets are probably available for those of you who are interested on the Academy Museum's website, or will be anyway. But before we go, a couple other things I want to discuss with you. One very serious but amazing, and the second one a little more humorous. But first one is, you know, I was reading the magazine interview that you did the other day, and I was amazed by the story, or the part of it about your clean energy company and clean electricity company, which, I mean, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, because I just think it's incredible. And especially given, you know, all the, you know, what's happening in the world right now, I think you had an amazing, you know, insight. I mean, even you started the company 25 years ago, or almost 25 years ago? Like, what was the story behind that?
Well, I started the company, but I shepherding this technology through the 80s and 90s. And it's a brand new way to electricity that is using aneutronic or non-radioactive fusion. Fusion is the same process that takes place of the sun, or in the core of the sun. And it's a way to use E equals mc squared, Einstein's equation, to derive energy from matter, because E energy equals matter, the mass of an object times the speed of light squared. So that means there's a lot of energy in this pen. Get the energy out of this pen, probably power New York. It's a lot of energy in matter. How do you get it out? That's what this scientist that I formed this company to support. He had this brilliant idea of how to do it in a very elegant way. And yet we're partnered with Google, and the former secretary on the board, the former head of General Electric, John board, former head of Morgan Stanley, John Mack is on the board of directors. And we are hopefully 2 years of being able to pull this off. When we do, it'll be a very clean, absolutely non-destructive source that can't blow up, can't down, and only produces helium as a.
It's incredible. It's really amazing. I mean, but out of curiosity, how did you may have mentioned this, but like, how did the idea even come to you to get involved in something like that?
Well, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, meet the right people, and then it felt to me, I either decided to go away and never be funded, or we were to form a company. And a small group of people that I was with didn't want to form a company, but I had the longest experience in technology out there, and there was absolutely no appetite for it. And the way it would ever succeed is if small people actually formed a company and got the license at the University of California. License was held because the inventor was the head of the physics department guy. He had worked on the Manhattan Project. He was a physicist of great renown, and anyway, thought his idea needed to get funded.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations on that. I mean, what a great thing to do for the world, seriously. By the way, someone said, which I did notice, it says, it was a little static, and somebody just referenced that. I wasn't sure if it was just on my end. So hopefully
I can hear when I talk.
When you talk, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can resolve that, but anyway, we'll see. Maybe it'll stop on its own. The last thing I wanted to bring up with you, which is something that my dad and I are obsessed with, is, and have been for years already, was your appearance on Curb Your Enthusiasm as Big Dog, which my dad and I have watched that clip, I kid you not, hundreds of times probably. I mean, over the years. You know, I literally watched it earlier today. It was, first of all, you were fantastic, and I'm just curious, how did that even come about? Because it was such a perfect combination. But you did such a great job.
Well, I hear that static. I wonder if I put these in, if that'll help. What do you think?
I think it sounds like it's better already. Oh, now you're. I don't think
Is
I'm
that
hearing
better? I don't hear
now.
the static anymore.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Well, there's a little static. I hear a little bit. Anyway,
Good now.
the casting director snuck me in because Larry never saw anybody who had a profile. And so the casting director she snuck me in. So the same thing happened on Mad Men. They snuck me in too because Matt Weiner never saw anybody with a profile. So I went into to read with Larry, and there's no script on that show. It's just an idea. He says, "Here's an idea. You're a producer. Your name's Big Dog, and we're going to have to share a kitchen together." And that was all I got. And so we just started improvising.
I mean, it was
and
brilliant.
He couldn't stop laughing. So he hired me, and then we did the scenes, and there's no script or anything. So I didn't know what I was going to say, and when I walked into his office the first time, but it just came to me that I said something like, you must see around town all the billboards, the shark show. And then it came to me, it was Great White Wonderland. I mean, and because it came to me in the moment, I didn't really stitch it together right because I hadn't thought about it before that second. So they kept trying to figure out how to get me to do ADR to make it work. But they finally just used the original take. But
it was so
I don't know what
perfect.
this
I mean, it's down to the 5-pound loaf of bread and everything. It was
and
the
it
whole
was.
thing was.
When I picked up that loaf of bread, it was so freaking heavy. I said, whoa. And I'd never touched it before, but I picked it up and I go, what is this?
You put this in your body, it weighs 5 pounds. And I'm not going to impersonate you in front of you, but you were brilliant, really brilliant. And that's crazy is that was, I mean, what? I think it was like 20 minutes, and yet it was so brilliant. So anyway, I'm huge fan of you're very versatile. I mean, between drama, comedy, I mean, you're an incredible actor. So,
Well, thank you. That's nice to say. Thank you.
but no, Harry, thank you so much. I'm honored and grateful to you for doing this. Someone asked in the
Sure.
comments where the screening is in June. It's at the Academy Museum in Los Angeles. And I'm sure the tickets, I'm pretty sure if they're not available on the website already, they will be soon. So, but anyway, thank you for all you've done for our community, for my community, for history, and again, thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. And great to see everybody. And thanks for joining.
Thank you, Harry. Have a good day.